Oh, this is class number 4, and gonna admit some people here. Hi, Josh.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. I obviously missed the last session. I was away for a few days there down in London, so
Oh,
just recovering from London.
that's weird because the last lot of courses that I taught, I had a gentleman from Edinburgh and he had to do a trip down to London. I just wiped him out as well. So
Yeah,
I know
I
it's,
was I'm okay. I was when I initially got back yesterday, I was pretty wiped out, but I've kind of I seem to sort of be okay after one good night's sleep and a bit of rest now, which is again a good bit of progress, shall we say, from whatever
yeah,
previously was. Yeah, so.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you joined us today. Okay. All right. So plan for today. Welcome Anna, welcome Joe, and welcome anyone who's watching this on record. Plan for today is we're going to talk about the nose, we're going to talk about the tongue, and we're going to talk about the exhale. Um, we're going to do a couple of breathing practices today, only because I want to introduce a very gentle breathing practice that may be useful if we go into that freeze or shutdown state. So, one of the things that Jackie and I both notice is when we start something new, and often learning about breathing is an introduction of new techniques, maybe a different schedule, and almost there's that sort of a little bit of excitement that here's something that, when you look at it on paper is really going to support my recovery. And we get almost overexcited. And I know for me, I sort of push myself a little bit too hard at points and put myself a little bit backwards. So, like anything new, post-exertional malaise is real. And I want to put that post-exertional malaise, I want you to think of these, these new breathing practices as exertion. They are exactly the same as a new emotional exertion, a physical exertion, a chemical exertion. If you think about breathing, they are all of those. So I will go back to our first session. Always be so gentle with yourself. Be patient. I'd love to say things will change overnight, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes it just takes a while for the body to assimilate this. And it's much better to do a little and often than to do too much and to feel that sort of that relapse or that letdown. So just to reiterate some of the safety behind the breathing and, like I said, the newness of everything. Um, okay, so before I get started with a nice, very, very gentle breathing exercise, does anyone have any questions on anything that we've covered or anything coming up? Any questions? Anna had a great question the other day about saliva. I think we managed to almost spend the whole class talking about saliva, but any questions? Anything? No? Okay. All right. So let's start with a very gentle breathing exercise. The other thing that I'm going to just put in here today, when we do this exercise, we're not going to start with any breath awareness because sometimes actually doing breath awareness, and again, this was the same for me, actually made my breathing more labored because I was actually focusing on my breathing rather than, and I was thinking, am I doing this right? How am I supposed to be feeling? So I was overthinking it. So we're not going to start with breath awareness. We're going to go straight into our breathing. And accompanying this breathing exercise, we are going to be doing movement. Now, before we all go, oh my gosh, this is exertion. The movement that we're going to be doing is a very gentle movement. It's with our inhale, we're going to be opening up our fingers. And with the exhale, we're going to be closing our fingers. And we're going to do the same thing with our feet. So on the inhale, we're going to just be lifting our toes. And on the exhale, we're going to be just relaxing our toes. So it's like this opening and closing. So the focus of this is not on your breath. It is literally on these micro movements. And the reason that we do this is because when we do these tiny little movements, it actually connects our breath with the movement. That's one thing that happens. But the other thing that happens is we do not build up any metabolic waste. So often when we do any kind of movement or breathing, there is a little bit of metabolic waste that gets produced by the body. And that is very difficult for the body to deal with when we are in shutdown or freeze. So this is such a relaxing exercise, and we're going to kind of move around the body. But I just want you just to keep focusing on the opening and the closing as I just sort of move you around different parts of the body and different sides as well. So don't overthink this. Let's everyone get comfortable. If you want to lay down, obviously that's the easiest place to practice a new exercise because a lot of gravity takes care of supporting us. But if we're seated, we're just going to get ourselves comfortable. So seated is with feet on the ground. And we're just going to make sure our spine and neck are aligned. And that is whether you're seated or laying down. So just making sure we're not in this forward head posture, just sliding that head back. Just tucking our rib cage down, just gently. So everything with the idea of safety and relaxation. And then gently resting your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Teeth slightly apart. And lips are relaxed. So before we do anything, we're just going to do some very gentle shoulder rolls. So in your own time, without any focus on anything except these little movements. So we're going to be rolling our shoulders back. So not changing the pace of your breath, just rolling those shoulders. And then maybe just having a little wiggle wherever you are, getting yourself just gently supported in the position that you're in. And then we're going to start with sending our focus to our right hand. And just as you breathe, just open up that right hand wherever it is on your body and then close that right hand. So very gentle movements, just opening and closing. So every time you inhale, you open your hand. Every time you exhale, you close your hand. So it's not a big movement. It's not a big spread of the fingers. It's just this relaxed opening, this relaxed closing, almost like a jellyfish, a flower, and maybe something that comes to mind is your diaphragm. So opening and closing. So again, not changing anything, just keeping that focus on that right hand. And then we're just going to move that focus to our left hand, just opening and closing. You may want to put your hand on your body, so opening and closing, just doing it as this gentle massaging action. You may want to do it on your belly or on your thighs. Just finding something that works for you. So again, not focused on the breath, focused on the movement of your fingers, of your hands. And then we're going to do both hands together. So opening those fingers, just that gentle expansion of the fingers, gentle relaxation of the hands. In time with your breath, without any kind of judgment. What's going on? And obviously, if this does not feel good to you right now, then just bring your hands to a gentle position. And just observe your body. Keep opening and closing. And then we're going to go down to our right foot. So lifting those right toes up on the inhale and relaxing that foot on the exhale. So again, thinking about softness through the body, softness in the forehead, in your eyes and cheeks. The tongue is soft. Your jaw is soft and your chest stays calm. Lifting that right foot on the inhale, relaxing it on the exhale. And then moving to that left side. So lifting those left toes on the inhale, relaxing them, placing them back on the floor on the exhale. So your breath mimics your movement. Your focus is on that movement. And it's normal to every now and again forget to breathe. Just bring it back. Thinking about softness through the body, thinking about safety in my body. You are safe. The body is doing exactly what it needs to do in this moment. And then we're going to start lifting both or all toes on the inhale. So 10 toes, just lift them up on the inhale and relax them on the exhale. So again, you're going to feel this flow, this wave of movement through the body. And then for the last little bit of this practice, what I'd like us all to do is to incorporate all of those movements. So on the inhale, we're going to open our fingers, lift our toes. And on the exhale, just think about softening and relaxing everything. So inhale, expanding, opening. And then exhale, softening, relaxing. Going to continue this for a few more minutes. And maybe just notice any kind of shift that you've had. If you've kept your focus on the movement of your hands and fingers, and notice that there's been a little shift in your nervous system, that indicates that this is a great connection. It indicates that your nervous system is not broken. You just need to sometimes take care of it, nurture it, and allow it just to do what it needs to do. So opening on the inhale, closing on the exhale. So like I said, before we finish this little moment where we've moved our focus, just begin to notice any changes. So again, we talk about saliva, we talk about warmth, we talk about that feeling of a little bit more calmness, relaxation, maybe a lower heart rate, maybe a tummy rumble. Maybe just that feeling of softness that comes over the body, or that feeling of feeling a little safer. And if you've got your eyes closed, you can just slowly open them. And if you're laying down and you want to stay where you are, please feel free. Just stay where you are right now. Stay off camera if you want to come back on camera. Like I said, we're going to talk about the nose, we're going to talk about the tongue, and then we're going to do some more breathing at the end of class. So whatever feels good for you today, I'm just going to invite you slowly to just come on back. And I think we're going to start talking about the tongue, because the tongue is one of those things that's often overlooked when it comes to functional breathing. So we always think about the tongue in things like taste and swallowing and speech, but we don't often focus on the tongue and its importance in the way that it supports a functional breath. And there is a huge correlation between what our tongue does during the day and the quality of sleep that we get at night. So I've talked a couple of times about the correct position for the tongue when we're breathing. And this actually should be, it should be something that we're practicing, because often if we're not aware of it, our tongue tends to sit in the bottom of our palate. And the correct position for your tongue is resting very gently on your upper palate. So right now, what I'd like you to do is just gently place that tongue in that upper palate. So almost covering the whole of your upper palate. So we've got molars at the back of our teeth or the back of our jaw. So the tongue just pushes gently up and goes from molar to molar, and then sits right behind your two front teeth. So the tip of your tongue sits behind those two front teeth. So you're trying to cover as much as of the top of your upper palate as possible. So the reason that we put that there is because the tongue, like I said, is integral in a functional breath. When your tongue is sitting in the bottom of your palate, you're not getting a good quality breath. You don't guarantee the same type of breath when the tongue is hanging out in the bottom. And believe it or not, the tongue, if you think about the shape of the tongue when it's sitting in that upper palate, is very much like a diaphragm. So it supports that diaphragmatic breath. And it also supports, like I said, a good functional breath. The tongue resting on the roof of the mouth also plays an essential role in balance. So one of the things I used to do as a personal trainer is I'd have people just stick their tongue out and try and balance. And very difficult. And then if you put the tongue resting gently on the roof of the mouth and then balance, it's a lot easier. So it's something you can do. Don't do it in the shower. Don't do it if you're feeling dizzy, but it is a really important position to help with that, let's say, that knock-on effect of my functional breath. I'm going to make sure that my head is in the correct position, but I'm going to also make sure that that tongue is resting in that upward position. Some of the things that we talk about is if you have a tongue that sort of is a little bit, and I'm going to use the word flaccid. So if we have a bigger tongue and we have a tongue that is not strong, one of the things we see is that that tongue has an inclination when we're sleeping to fall down our throat. So when we get that tongue slipping back into our throat, that's when we get sleep apneas. So that I'm going to say that pause in breathing during sleep. And it's also going to increase our possibility of snoring. So the tongue has a direct relationship to your sleep quality. So by making sure that during the day your tongue is resting on the roof of your mouth, you are going to then, that will translate to it being in the proper position when you're sleeping. So we don't want that tongue sliding down. There are tongue exercises. So, often people think, I've never thought about my tongue before, but there are tongue stretches, there is tongue strengthening. Women that are post-menopausal or going through menopause or even perimenopausal have a huge increase in sleep apnea and interrupted sleep. And one of the things that research shows us is that when we go through that hormone change, the distribution of fat changes in our body, and we tend to get more of a distribution of fat from the chest upwards, so neck and tongue. And that is one of the reasons that sleep apnea increases in postmenopausal women. So one of the things we can do to help alleviate that is, like I said, just noticing where our tongue is and doing, like, you can do gentle push-ups. So just if you're sitting there right now, think about that gentle position that we've talked about for the tongue, just resting on the roof of the mouth. So put your tongue up there and then think of really making a little bit of exertion and pushing that tongue up, like you're doing a tongue push-up. So you're pressing hard onto the roof of the mouth, and you're going to feel a little bit of tension right through here and also in the tongue. So that is what we would call a tongue strengthening exercise. Is tongue stretching exercises that you can do by opening your mouth very wide and then placing the tip of your tongue on the roof of the mouth. So it would look like this. I'm on camera. I'm happy to do this. So I'm trying to open my mouth as wide as I can and then place the tongue up. The other thing that you can do that is very therapeutic and also good for vagus nerve stimulation is to move the tongue around the mouth. So even massaging the inside of your mouth with your tongue, we have a lot of vagus nerve points in this area. So placing the tongue on one side and pushing your cheek out. So that's a stretch and also a strengthening exercise. And then going to the other side. And then sticking your tongue out in front as far as you can. So there are things that we can do to train our tongues to make sure that we are getting that best functional breath. And it, like I said, it may not be something that you've thought about, but there is, like I said, a direct relationship between breathing and sleep and the tongue position. So it's vital for restorative sleep. Because like I said, a flaccid, fatty tongue is going to encroach on that airway, contributing to snoring and sleep apnea. So that's about the tongue. So when I talk about posture and we set up for a breathing exercise and we start saying, okay, we're going to sit here, rest that tongue gently on the roof of the mouth, that is there for, or said for a reason. That is the correct posture. And there's a whole industry of myofacial functional exercise that we do for people that have bad dentition or that they've changed their facial shape because of the positioning of the tongue throughout the day. So tongue position, really important. So it's not just about sleep, swallowing, taste, and speech. It is vital for the correct breath. So that's number one. Number two, we're going to talk a little bit now about the nose. So I know last week Josh had asked a question about different stages of breathing, but I'm now going to just move into the important functions of the nose, which we did touch a little bit on Monday, saying that there are actually 30 functions that are associated with the nose and breathing, and there's one with the mouth and breathing. So with the mouth and breathing, it is for that emergency breath, but for the nose, there are so many benefits. So we talked a little bit about nasal nitric oxide. We talked about sterilizing the air. We talked about slowing the breath down. We talked about the importance of the gas exchange and getting more air down into those lower parts of the lungs where we get a good diffusion of blood and gas so that can then open up the airways and also get oxygen to the places in the body that needs it, and accompany that are those levels of carbon dioxide. Now, when we first talk about nasal breathing, I think one of our focuses is we immediately bring our attention to a nasal breath that literally goes into the front part of our nostrils. So right now, what we're going to do is I'm going to see if I've got my handy dandy, which I don't have, but I'm going to show you where your nasal or your upper palate, your nasal cavity goes. So when we think about nasal breathing, we often think about just breathing into this space here, this space at the front of our nostrils. Your nasal cavity actually goes from your nostrils all the way back to almost the back of your molars. So if you think about taking a nasal breath, so right now, what I'd like us all to do is just place the tongue on the roof of your mouth. And instead of thinking about a nasal breath here, I want you to think about inhaling and moving that air that you're inhaling into this lovely, expansive nasal cavity or a cave that is sitting right here. Even maybe thinking about moving. So for some people, I would suggest think about moving that air almost into the back of your throat, because there's that connection there. So just closing your eyes, and on your next inhale, thinking about that nasal breath. So just stay there for a minute. As I said, thinking about that great big expanse of space that you have to move that air into. And then I'm going to ask you to bring your attention into the back side of your body, so into your spine. And for the next few breaths, without any kind of judgment, so you may not feel any movement, but by focusing on that nasal cavity, does it enable a more expansive back breath? So when I say back breath, I'm just talking about the back of our spine that is almost here. So just put my hand right there. And you may want to put your hand there. Or you may want to just push against a chair or against something that you're laying on. And as you nasal breathe, see if you can feel just a tiny movement in the backside of your rib cage. And like I said, that is without judgment. If we haven't used those muscles before, it may be something that you're not feeling right now. But what I'm trying to point out is when we have a bigger, expansive nasal breath, we can open up the body easier. So that's part of our nasal breathing. My trick usually is if I've got a Q-tip, I can put it in my nose and it goes all the way back, but I haven't got a Q-tip. And I'm not doing it with a straw today. All right, so that's your nose. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of things that are going to sort of bring together the importance of the nose. So I think everyone's probably got a phone close by them. So we're going to talk about the difference between your right nostril and your left nostril. So take your phone, if you've got one handy. So I've got my phone here. And what I'd like you to do is just put the screen up. So put the screen up towards the ceiling, and then bring that screen right underneath your nose. And when you're ready, just do a normal inhale, and then do an exhale onto that screen. And then just take a look at the shadow of your breath. So you'll see a little, there's humidity in your breath, and you'll see that there's a little shape. And there'll be a shadow for your left nostril and a shadow for your right nostril. Okay, and we're going to talk about the difference in those two nostrils right now. So we've now got an idea of if we've got more air coming out of our right nostril on the exhale or more air coming out of our left nostril. Now, your right nostril is think of it as your gas pedal. So if I want to get myself a little bit upregulated or a little bit more alert, I am going to breathe into my right nostril. That is connected with my sympathetic nervous system. It is going to speed up my circulation. It increases my cortisol production. It increases my blood pressure and my heart rate. It is also connected with the left side of my brain, which is the logical, language, and computing side. So if you've done any kind of yoga, there's a breathing practice that they do, alternate nostril breathing. The one that we teach is left nostril breathing, and you're going to see why that is applicable for people that want to get into that down-regulated state. So your right nostril is your gas pedal, and it is connected to that left side of the brain. Now, your left nostril is the brake. So the brake, this is my left nostril, it's connected to the right side of my brain. That's going to increase my creative thought. It's going to help promote down regulation. It's going to decrease my blood pressure. It helps cool my body, and it reduces anxiety. So the left side connected to the right side of the brain, it is a down-regulating, relaxed part of the breath cycle. So when you breathe on your phone, I can look at mine right now. I've got a bigger right side because I'm teaching. I'm having to think, this is and I'm using language. But sometimes it's a good indication of what's going on with my body. And as I said, one of the things that we teach, and we're not going to do it today, we're going to build up to it, is that left nostril breathing, because we know that the left nostril breathing is going to help down-regulate the body. Okay, so that's just a little thing that we can do. The other thing that I always like to talk about is, what do we do if we feel, when we were talking about that movement of air and trying to move that air into that nasal cavity? So we've got these things called fingers. And if we feel like we need to take, or we're not getting as much air in as we would like, we can take our fingers, and you can do this right now. I'm going to take my glasses off. So take your fingers and just place them almost right below your eye socket. So right there. And then you're going to gently just pull your fingers apart, so to the sides laterally. And when you do that, just notice if that nasal breath doesn't become or feel a little bit fuller. So this may be something that you can do to encourage just a little bit more air to enter that nose, to feel like it's slowly entering and opening that nasal passage and then getting down into the lungs. The other thing that people that suffer with chronic congestion, we're going into allergy season for some people, are these things, these Breathe Right strips that you may see like marathon runners wearing, that they wear right across the nose here. That has exactly the same effect as the fingers. Now, this finger movement is actually called the Cottle maneuver. So we use it to help open up that nasal passage so that, we feel like we get a better breath. But for chronically congested people, these are very useful. If you notice that during the night you get very congested in your nose, this might be a great thing to wear at night, just to help encourage the nose to stay open so that you can continue to nasal breathe at night, because that's ultimately what we're looking to do. So as I said, this nose breathing and the correct position of the tongue, very important for your functional breath. So your nose, first organ of your respiratory system. Remember, it is filtering that air. It is increasing that nasal nitric oxide, which is improving blood flow, and it cleanses the air. It helps, the nose helps us breathe into the diaphragm. It helps slows our breath. It decreases blood pressure, regulates heart rate, and improves digestion. So what we're going to do now, and again, we touched on this in the last part of the class when we were talking with Josh about the 4 parts of our breath. We are now going to, as a breathing practice, work on gently extending our exhale. So, as I said before, our breath has 4 parts. We have an inhale. We have a pause at the top of the inhale, which it may be 0 for you. And then we have an exhale. And then we may have a pause at the bottom of the exhale. Now, not to confuse you, but our inhale is also our gas pedal. So when we inhale, that is when we turn on the switch. When we exhale, that is when we encourage the down regulation. That's the off switch. So when we're looking at introducing a calming breath, a breath that is going to allow our body to feel safe, we are going to look for ways to gently and very patiently extend that exhale. So extending your exhale is a great way to engage your parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest. So it's something for most of us that's something we haven't focused on before, but what we're going to do today is we're going to gently bring our attention, and this may not be suitable for you today, but I'm just going to bring it to your attention so that you can at some point just begin to notice the shape of your breath. We've talked about that before, but we're going to, and I'm going to have us use our fingers to do this, because I think often having touch on our body is really important, but it also gives us an idea of the shape of our breath. So what I'd like you to do is, this is going to be our little breathing experiment, and our focus is going to be trying to gently extend our exhale. So we're going to start with just closing our eyes, and we're going to take our finger or our hand, whichever you want to do, and you're going to bring your attention onto your breath. And as you inhale, I'm going to draw on my body, or I'm going to draw on the desk in front of me with my finger. So my finger is going to just trace my breath. And then as I exhale, I'm going to change the direction of my finger. So if I was drawing on this screen, it would be inhale, exhale. So that's what I'd like us to do, is an exploration. So we're going to allow our breath to settle, and then we're going to start drawing our breath. And the first thing we're going to change is, if we've got a longer inhale, we're going to rob from the inhale and just balance our breath. So our inhale will then equal our exhale. So you can think of it like a mountain. Inhale, exhale. And then we're going to see if we can just very gently encourage that exhale to become just a little bit longer. And a fraction of a second will be enough. Okay, so you can always take breaks when you want to. And if it's a struggle, just take a break. Please don't overdo this. Start with an even inhale, exhale. And if that just feels different, leave it at that, because we can always add to it rather than overdoing it. So, all right, let's get comfortable again. So like I said, you can use your finger, draw it on your desk in front of you, use it on your body, whatever suits you. And as I said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to allow our breath to settle. So just for a few minutes, however that works for you. And it may be that you want to return to the inhale with the fingers and the exhale, the softening, or hand on belly, whichever works for your body right now. And remember, small is key here. Always ask yourself, does my body like this? Is this the right time to be doing this for my body today? And then when you're ready, placing your finger on your body or on that desk in front of you, thinking of your finger as a pencil. So as you inhale, just allow the finger to move in one direction. And as you exhale, allow your finger to move in a different direction. So you're literally drawing your breath. And we're going to do that for a couple of breaths before we make note of the shape of your breath. And then without changing your breath right now, I would just like you to look down at your finger and look at the shape that you are drawing, the shape of your breath. And then the next part of this exercise is just if your inhale is longer than your exhale, just see if you can just draw with, or just with your breath, do a mountain. So go up one side and then down the other side. So inhaling and exhaling at the same pace. So you'll be shortening your inhale and just adding a little bit to your exhale, remembering the key question is, does my body like this? And always knowing you can take a break whenever you need to. And then if and when you're ready, see if you can gently make that exhale a tiny bit longer, like I said, a fraction of a second. So tongue is resting on the roof of your mouth. You're thinking about a gentle, soft inhale and a nice relaxed, just a tiny extended exhale. And noticing what that does to your breath, what it does to your body. So thinking about that movement of air into that nasal cavity that we talked about today. And then allowing that air to just gently leave the body. Extending that exhale. Remember, just a fraction of a second will make a difference. So taking breaks whenever you need to. Just doing what feels right for you right now. So we'll spend a couple more minutes here. You may want to just return to a diaphragm breath. Just keeping your attention right now on that inhale versus that exhale. We're just trying to just gently nudge or invite the body to get into that rest and digest. So last couple of breaths. And then if your eyes are closed, just when you're ready, open the eyes. Open that vision. Slowly come on back. Maybe have a little bit of a movement always. The shoulders go back. Maybe we just need to have a little fidget around, or just like that feeling of pressure, safety on our chest or on our belly. Just that little bit of movement. And then we have got time for some questions and answers. If anyone's got any questions or anything they'd like to share, any observations. So anyone got anything? Everyone gone to sleep?
Yeah, I've got a little question. I obviously, because I've done singing for the past 20 years, a lot of this stuff I kind of have already been doing, so it kind of comes naturally to me. Um, but I do find that, generally speaking, I have quite a long exhale,
Mm-hmm.
like naturally. Is that okay? Can it get to the point where having too much of a long exhale is maybe not so great, or does it just mean I naturally can relax into that kind of rest and digest easier, I suppose?
Yeah, it is. As long as you're not, one of the things that we do see is some people extend their exhale so long that their following inhale becomes actually compromised, if that makes sense. It's like I've exhaled so long, but then my following inhale is just this tiny little, and then what happens is that then snowballs sometimes, Josh, into a I will almost call it a dysfunctional breath. So it's important, one of the things that I think is put out there on the internet with this longer exhale is you've got that 4-6 breath. So you've got an inhale for a count of 4, and then you've got an exhale for a count of 6. And I think for many people, they know that as a cadence breath. Now, that is going to reduce your breathing rate to 6 breaths per minute. Okay, and you don't need to be breathing less than that per minute, because then you're going to get into a cycle of not hyperventilation, you'll get hypoventilation, which is you're not going to be getting the best gas exchange. I was in a class with a lady one time, and she literally breathed once per minute. And she was asking the instructor, is this okay? And he said, that is not okay. That is, you are not getting, the most out of your breath. So to find that little sweet spot, but not to take it to an extreme. So an inhale for 1 and an exhale for, if we say 10, Josh, and I'm just picking numbers out of a hat. If we say 10 is our number, and our inhale is 1 and our exhale is 9, that is not a functional shape. Okay, because what's going to happen on that inhale, if you think about it, your inhale is actually where your rib cage is going to expand. That's where you get that rib cage movement. And if you're only inhaling for a very short time, you'll get this. You'll get a tiny movement. So we want to have some movement on the inhale, but we don't want a huge inhale and then no exhale. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, looking at it from a breathing mechanics, a lot of people, this movement here, this expansion allows actually a better exhale. The more that we can inhale, the better that we can exhale. So, yeah. And that's why, guys, so part of this, what we'll be teaching. So if this felt weird for you, that's very normal. If you're not used to extending that exhale, this may feel like, okay, this feels like I suddenly go into that, I almost call it that, you get that jagged breath again. So we're going to continue to work on that, because that has a lot to do with our breathing mechanics. But we are going to have some exercises that are going to be introduced, things like humming. Humming is a great way to help us gently extend that exhale without having too much thought behind it. So it is, for many people, that's their go-to down-regulating exercise to extend the exhale. Because if you think about a hum, it's just a very quiet inhale. And then your exhale just happens very naturally, and you just make a sound, and the air escapes. So humming, great down-regulating exercise. It may be something that you want to try if you're finding it a little bit awkward to extend that exhale. One of the things that I heard in a podcast, it was a Andrew Huberman podcast. I know I listen to him a lot, but he has so much great information. And he's not a breathing expert, but he tends to bring things together to support the health of a body. And he was saying the best exercise to do to downregulate the body is to do 15 deliberate breaths with a slightly extended exhale. and I'll send you a link to that podcast. But that was his, if we do one thing a day to help help the body feel safe, is to do 15 deliberate breaths with a longer exhale. So that may be 15 hums, or it may be just taking our finger and just allowing that exhale. Or that's what our physiological sigh does. Does it not extend our exhale? So however that works for you, but we will continue that conversation, because like I said, our breathing mechanics has a lot to do with us being able to extend that exhale. Any other questions, guys? Okay. All right. So next week, because today is Wednesday, next week, Monday, we're going to be talking about the diaphragm. So we're going to be doing some more diaphragm breathing. We're going to be doing some extensions, some diaphragm, movement of the rib cage and the back, just to feel that diaphragm moving. We'll take a deep dive into what this diaphragmatic breath really encourages, especially with a view to the symptoms that it will help support for us. One of the things that you can do between now and then is, as I said, don't overdo the breathing, a little and often. If the hands helped bring something like that, for some people, Jackie is a great person. When she was dealing with long COVID, I know that she spent, and she's fine with me sharing this, so I'm sharing. She is a stuffed animal person. And for her, when she was in that state of dysregulation, her go-to was lying on a couch, and she found stuffed animals as a very relaxing modality, just to feel that, it's almost like you're giving yourself a hug. So finding things that help you. For me, it was actually holding something like a stone and just having some sort of sensory thing, or it was literally just, one of the safest positions, I'm just talking right now, one of the safest positions for us when we feel threatened is that fetal position. So if you think about when we were in vitro, that was the safest we've ever been in our body. We were protected. So one of the things that I would do when I was feeling particularly activated is I would literally sit on the floor with my back against the wall, and I would sort of hug my knees, or I'd lay on the ground and bring my knees up. And for me, that was a feeling of safety, and I could do my breathing in those positions. So I'm just giving you some things that you can, put in your toolbox to think about, of feelings of safety. If you're trying new things, always try them lying down. So if you want to work on doing this extended exhale, do it either laying on your back or laying on your sides, because we know that gravity, some people like to lay on their bellies, but it's that feeling of we've got some sort of support. So just being open to trying different positions, trying different breathing, or maybe not even focusing on the breathing, just focus on something like a hand movement, or that feeling of, a pet, or, holding your own hands. So little things to try, guys. Okay. And don't forget about your tongue. Don't forget about that nose, the Cottle maneuver. So just bringing those things, if you can, into that conscious breath. And any questions that you have between now and Monday, just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you. And then often I will answer questions in the next session. So, all right, Josh, I'm glad you got back safely. Anna, nice to see you. Joe, enjoy your weekend in Chicago. And to all of those watching, just if you need to contact me, I'm here. Okay. Guys, I'll see you next week.